The Google Play Newstand app was an app used
Sorry,
to.
I can't help with that yet.
I wasn't talking to you, Google. Hey everybody, it's Mike from Nerdient. Today we are looking at the new Google News app. So Google recently just released a new Google News app, and it's intended to replace their Google Play Newsstand app as well as their Google News and Weather app. So let's take a look real quick at these two apps that Google is replacing. The Google Play Newsstand app is basically a news aggregator. Magazine style of app where you can look at several publications. The Google News and Weather app is sort of the app version of Google News, where it aggregates news stories. Now, I've never been much of a Google Play Newsstand user. I use Feedly as my news aggregator, and I'm real deep into that app, and I've got it all customized. So Google Play Newsstand is an app that just never really appealed to me. However, Google News and Weather, which is again sort of the app version of the Google News service, is an app that I heavily use. So the question for me is, can the new Google News app replace the old Google News and Weather app? So let's dive into them and take a look. So let's take a look at the old Google News and Weather app and how I used it. So here's the old Google News and Weather app. And we're going to jump right into technology because that's really what I use it for the most, is to follow tech news. So here you have the basic setup of the app, and how you get top stories and on, and technology. And all of these are basically on the top here, your sort of standard headlines. And then from here, I've customized it to look at video games, Microsoft, Android, Nintendo, Google, Apple, Twitter, etc. And this is sort of the way that I've customized it, because obviously I'm really into tech news, and so I like to really dive deep down into different topics. So with this app, let's just go to technology. So let's take a look at this Samsung story, and if you hit the down arrow button, you get a little bit more information on that story, maybe another story or two to look at. And then if there's a story you want to read it, you just click on it. It opens up a browser window and you can read it. And if you want to share it out, just hit the share button and you can choose an app to share with. I share most of my stuff using Buffer, so if I want to share that out, I just share with Buffer and I can tweet it right out from there. Okay, so that's pretty much the old app in a nutshell. And like I said, I've had it set up to follow multiple topics like Android. And again, here's some Android stories, and if you look deeper into it, an arrow down will give you more stories about it. So that's how I would use this app. If I'm sharing stuff out to Twitter or Google Plus or Facebook, this is kind of one of my go-to apps for sharing information. All right, now let's look at the new app. So here is the new Google News app. And right away at the top, when you open it up, it chooses headlines that they think is relevant to you. And using AI, it changes over time depending on how you use the app. So let's say you're interested in this PC World story. What Google does is, a lot of these stories, they have what they call perspective, and you hit the perspective button, and now it expands to a lot more sources, videos, basically a more in-depth look at the subject. On the bottom you have For You, which is the recommended 5 headlines, and then it goes into the headlines. And this is sort of similar to the other one, where it has your basic topics right across the top. Let's go to technology, just like I did in the previous one. So again, there is that same Samsung story, and let's hit the perspective on this app. what you can see is one, just presents it in a much better presentation. I mean, it just looks great. And then the other thing is, it really dives down to, and I think, more sources, and they try to balance out the sources as well. And then it's got from Twitter and more coverage. And if there's some video, there's usually a video tab if there's a video associated. So really, what you'll see is a lot more in-depth information with this app. It uses Google AI to try to sort of balance out that information. So what about the customizations that I made in the old app? Well, they actually stayed. It's now in the bottom tab of favorites, and then there are all my favorite topics again. It's Android, and here's some Android headlines. And again, if you want to look at this story about Steam Link, hit the full coverage, and you start to get a lot more perspective about it. Videos, more coverage, and things like that. So, what I find with the new app is I can get all of the information that I was getting with the old app, but it's even more information. It's deeper, it's more balanced, the presentation is great. So let's say you want to read one of these stories. Instead of opening up in a browser window, it's presented right in the app like that. But it's still a Google AMP page, and if you want to share out from here, you can share. And what's nice is it actually shares out the article, not like a link back to Google News or anything like that. As you can see, it shares out the actual URL of the article. And that's what I like. When I'm sharing stuff out on Twitter or things like that, I don't want to like share out like a Google News link or anything like that, or an Apple News link. I just like to share out the true link. And this does that by default, which is great. So let's a quick look at the new Google News app and how it replaces those two former apps. For me personally, I like it a lot. It's just a much better looking app. It's easier to find things with this app on a broader sense. In other words, all the same subjects are there and all the main stories are there, but one story I can look at 10 different perspectives on. And it's just a much more pleasant looking app. In fact, it really took no time at all for me to stop using that old app and start using this new app right away and put it right into my workflow. It's a great app. I recommend you try it. It's available for both Android and Apple. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. This is Mike from Nerdient.